Horeb Beruach, Sword of the Spirit, narrated and interpreted by Wendy. 2nd Melachim, 2nd Kings. Chapter 1. Then, after the death of Ahab, Moab rebelled against Yeshariel. Furthermore, Ahiz Yehu fell down through the lattice of his upper chamber that was in Shamarun and was injured. Then he sent messengers and said to them, Go, inquire of Baal-zebub, the deity of Akrun, if I will recover of this injury. But an angel of Yahweh said to Eliyahu the Tishbi, Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Shamarun, and say to them, Is it because there is no Elohim in Yeshariel that you inquire of Baal-zebub, the deity of Akrun? Now therefore, thus saith Yahweh, you will not come down from the bed on which you have gone up. Then Eliyahu departed. And when the messengers returned to him, he asked them, Why have you returned? And they answered him, A man came up to us and said to us, Go, return to the king who sent you, and say to him, Thus saith Yahweh, Is it because there is no Elohim in Yeshariel that you inquire of Baal-zebub, the deity of Akrun? Now therefore, thus saith Yahweh, you will not come down from that bed on which you have gone up, but you will surely die. So he asked them, What type of man came up to meet you, and told you these words? And they answered him, A hairy man, and dressed with a leather girdle around his loins. Therefore he said, It was Eliyahu the Tishbi. Therefore the third captain of 50 went up with his 50 to him. And he went up to him, and behold, he sat on top of a hill. Then he spoke to him, Man of Elohim, the king has said, Come down. However, Eliyahu answered and said to the captain of 50, If I am a man of Elohim, then let fire come down from the heavens and consume you and your 50. Then fire came down from the heavens and consumed him and his 50. Then again he sent another captain of 50 with his 50 to him. And he responded and said to him, O man of Elohim, thus saith the king, Come down quickly. But Eliyahu answered and said to them, If I am a man of Elohim, let fire come down from the heavens and consume you and your 50. And the fire of Elohim came down from the heavens and consumed him and his 50. Again he sent a third captain of 50 with his 50. Therefore the third captain went up and came and fell upon his knees before Eliyahu and besought him and said to him, O man of Elohim, I pray you, let my life and the life of these 50, your servants, be precious in your sight. Behold, fire came down from the heavens and burnt up the 2 captains of the former 50s and their 50s. Now therefore, let my life be precious in your sight. Therefore the angel of Yahweh said to Eliyahu, Go down with him. Do not be afraid of him. So he arose and went down with him to the king. And he said to him, Thus saith Yahweh, Because you have sent messengers to inquire of Baal-zebub, the deity of Akrun, is there no Elohim in Yeshariel to inquire of his word? Therefore you will not come down off that bed on which you have gone up, but you will surely die. So he died according to the word of Yahweh, which Eliyahu had spoken. And because he had no son, Jehoram reigned in his stead during the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Yehushapath, king of Yehudah. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaz Yehu, which he did, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the Kings of Yeshariel? Chapter 2. And it came to pass when Yahweh took up Eliyahu into the heavens by a whirlwind, that Eliyahu went up with Elishua from Gilgal. Then Eliyahu said to Elishua, Tarry here, I pray you, for Yahweh has sent me to Beit El. But Elishua said, As Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So they went down to Beit El. And the sons of the prophets who were at Beit El came forth to Elishua and said to him, Did you know that Yahweh will take away your Lord from over your head today? Therefore he answered, Yes, I know it. Hold your peace. Then Eliyahu said to him, Elishua, tarry here, I pray you, for Yahweh has sent me to Jericho. However, he said, As Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So they went to Jericho. Then the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho came to Elishua and said to him, Did you know that Yahweh will take away your Lord from over your head today? Therefore he answered, Yes, I know it. Hold your peace. And Eliyahu said to him, Tarry here, I pray you, for Yahweh has sent me to Yarden. But he answered, As Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. Therefore the two of them went on. And 50 men from the sons of the prophets went and stood to watch from afar off, and the two of them stood by the Yarden. Then Eliyahu took his mantle and wrapped it together, and struck the watchers. Then they were divided here and there, so that the two of them went over on dry ground. Then, when they had gone over, Eliyahu said to Elishua, Ask what I should do for you before I am taken away from you. Therefore Elishua said, I pray you, let a double portion of your spirit be upon me. And he answered, You have asked a hard thing. If you see me when I am taken from you, it will be so for you. But if not, it will not be so. Then, as they continued on and talked, behold, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated them both. And Eliyahu went up by a whirlwind into the heavens. Moreover, Elishua saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariot of Yeshariel, and its horsemen. Then he saw him no more, and he took hold of his own clothes, and tore them in 2 pieces. Also he took up the mantle of Eliyahu that fell from him, and went back and stood by the bank of the Yarden. And he took the mantle of Eliyahu, which fell from him, and struck the waters, and said, Where is Yahweh, Elohim of Eliyahu? And when he had smitten the waters, they parted here and there. Then Elishua went over. And when the sons of the prophets who were watching from Jericho saw him, they said, The Ruach of Eliyahu rests upon Elishua. Therefore they came to meet him, and bowed themselves to the ground before him. And they said to him, Behold now, here are 50 of your strong servants. We pray you, let them go and seek your master, lest perhaps the Ruach of Yahweh has taken him up, and has cast him upon some mountain, or into some valley. But he answered, You will not send. However, when they urged him until he was ashamed, he said, Send. Therefore they sent 50 men, and they sought for 3 days, but did not find him. Furthermore, when they came again to him, for he tarried at Jericho, he said to them, Did I not say to you, Do not go? Then the men of the city said to Elishua, Behold, I pray you, the situation of this city is pleasant, as my Lord sees, but there is no water, and the ground is barren. Therefore he said, Bring me a new jug, and put salt in it. So they brought it to him. Then he went to the spring of waters, and cast the salt in there, and said, Thus saith Yahweh, I have healed these waters. There will not be any more death, nor barren from here. So the waters were healed that day, according to the saying of Elishua, which he spoke. And he went up from there to Beit El. And as he was going up by the way, there came forth little children out of the city, who mocked him, and said to him, "Arise, ye bald head! Arise, ye bald head!" Therefore he turned back and looked at them and cursed them in the name of Yahweh. Then 2 she-bears came out of the forest, and they scattered the 42 children. Then he went from there to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Shamarun. Chapter 3. Now Jehoram, the son of Ahab, began to reign over Yeshareal in Shamarun, the 18th year of Yehoshaphat, king of Yehuda, and he reigned 12 years. And he worked evil in the sight of Yahweh, but not like his father, and not like his mother, for he put away the monument of Baal that his father had made. Nevertheless, he clung to the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Yeshareal to sin. He did not depart from it. Furthermore, Misha, the king of Moab, was a sheep trader, and he provided 100,000 lambs and 100,000 rams with the wool to the king of Yeshareal. However, when Ahab died, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Yeshareal. Also, that same time, King Jehoram went out of Shamarun and numbered all Yeshareal. Then he went and sent to Yehoshaphat, the king of Yehuda, saying, "The king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go with me to battle against Moab?" Therefore he answered, "I will go up. I am as you are. My people are as your people. My horses are as your horses." Then he asked, "Which way will we go up?" And he answered, "The way through the wilderness of Adum." Therefore the king of Yeshareal and the king of Yehuda and the king of Adum went a 7-day journey around. However, there was no water for the army or for the livestock that followed them. And the king of Yeshareal said, "Alas, for Yahweh has called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab." But Yehoshaphat said, "Is there not a prophet of Yahweh here, by whom we may inquire of Yahweh?" Therefore one of the servants of the king of Yeshareal answered and said, "There is Elishua, the son of Shaphath, who poured water upon the hands of Eliyahu." Then Yehoshaphat said, "The word of Yahweh is with him." So the king of Yeshareal and Yehoshaphat and the king of Adum went down to him. Therefore Elishua said to the king of Yeshareal, "What do I have to do with you? Get yourself to the prophets of your father and to the prophets of your mother." However, the king of Yeshareal said to him, "No, for Yahweh has called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab." And Elishua said, "As Yahweh of hosts lives, before whom I stand, surely, if it were not that I regard the presence of Yehoshaphat, the king of Yehuda, I would not look for you nor see you. Now therefore bring me a minstrel." And it came to pass, when the minstrel played, that the hand of Yahweh came upon him. And he said, "Thus saith Yahweh, make this valley full of ditches. For thus saith Yahweh, you will not see wind, nor will you see rain, yet that valley will be filled with water, so that you may drink, both you and your livestock and your beasts. Also, this is easy in the sight of Yahweh. Therefore Moab will be given into your hand, and you will strike every fenced city, and every choice city, and will drop every good tree, and stop all wells of water, and mar every good piece of land with stones." And it came to pass in the morning, when the grain offering was offered, behold, there came water by the way of Adum, and the country was filled with water. And when all Moab heard that the kings had come up to fight against them, they gathered all who were able to put on armor and upward. Then they stood in the border. Furthermore, they rose up early in the morning, and the sun was shining upon the water. And on the other side, Moab saw the water. It was red like blood. And they said, "This is blood. Surely the kings are slain, and they have struck one another. Now therefore, to the plunder, Moab." However, when they came to the camp of Yashareel, the Yashareeli rose up and struck Moab, so that they fled before them, and they went forward striking Moab, even in their country. And they tore down the cities, and each man threw a stone on every piece of good land, and filled it. And they stopped all the wells of water, and cut down all the good trees, except in Ger-Kershet they left its stones. However, the slingers went around and struck it. And when the king of Moab saw that the battle was too severe for him, he took 700 men who drew swords with him to break through to the king of Adum. But they could not. So he took his eldest son, who would have reigned in his stead, and offered him as a burnt offering upon the wall. Then there was a great indignation against Yashareel. Therefore they departed from him and returned to their own land. Chapter 4. And a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried to Elishua, saying, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant revered Yahweh. However, the creditor has come to take my 2 sons to be bondmen for himself." Therefore Elishua said to her, "What should I do for you? Tell me what you have in the house." And she said, "Your handmaid has nothing in the house except for a pot of oil." Then he said, "Go borrow vessels abroad from your neighbors, empty vessels. Do not borrow a few. And when you have come in, you will shut the door upon yourself and your sons, and will pour out into your vessels, and you will set aside that which is full." Then she went from him and shut the door upon her and upon her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said to her son, "Still bring me a vessel." However, he said to her, "There is no more vessels." Then the oil stayed. Furthermore, she came and told the man of Elohim, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debt. Then you and your children may live from the rest." Furthermore, it came to pass that Elishua passed to Shumain, and there was a great woman, and she persuaded him to eat bread. And it was, as often as he passed by, he turned in there to eat bread. And she said to her husband, "Behold now, I perceive that this is a holy man of Elohim, who always passes by us. I pray you, let us make a little chamber on the wall, and there let us set a bed and a table and a stool and a menorah for him. And it will be when he comes to us that he will turn in there." And it came to pass that he came there and turned into the chamber and laid there. And he said to Gehazi, his servant, "Call to the Shunammite woman." And when he called her, she stood before him. And he said to him, "Now say to her, Behold, you have been caring for us. With all this care, what can be done for you? Should you be spoken of to the king or to the captain of the host?" And she answered, "I will dwell among my own people." Then he said, "What then can be done for her?" And Gehazi answered, "Truly she has no child, and her husband is old." Therefore he said, "Call her." And when he called her, she stood in the door. Then he said, "About this season, according to the time of life, you will embrace a son." However, she said, "No, my lord, man of Elohim, do not lie to your handmaid." However, the woman conceived and bore a son during the season that Elishua had said to her, according to the time of life. And when the child was grown, it came to pass that he went out to his father, to the reapers. And he said to his father, "My head, my head." And he said to a young man, carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat upon her knees until noon. Then he died. Therefore she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of Elohim, and shut the door upon him, and went out. Then she called to her husband and said, I pray you, send me one of your young men, and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of Elohim. Then I will return. And he said, Why will you go to him today? It is not a new moon, nor Shabbat. However, she said, Restoration. Then she saddled an ass and said to her servant, Drive and go forward. Do not slack riding for me, except I bid you. So she went and came to the man of Elohim at Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of Elohim saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi his servant, Behold, it is the Shunammite woman. Now run to meet her, I pray you, and say to her, Is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with your child? And she answered, It is well. However, when she came to the hill, to the man of Elohim, she caught him by his feet. Then Gehazi came near to thrust her away. But the man of Elohim said, Let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her, and Yahweh has hid it from me, and has not told me. Then she said, Did I desire a son from my Lord? Did I not say, Do not deceive me? Therefore he said to Gehazi, Gird up your loins and take my staff in your hand, and go your way. If you meet any man, do not salute him, and if any salute you, do not answer him again, and lay my staff upon the face of the child. Moreover, the mother of the child said, As Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. Then he arose and followed her. Furthermore, Gehazi passed on before them, and laid the staff upon the face of the child. But there was neither voice nor hearing. Therefore he went again to meet him, and told him, saying, The child has not awakened. And when Elishua came to the house, behold, the child was dead, lying upon his bed. Therefore he went in and shut the door upon them, and prayed unto Yahweh. And he went up and laid upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child became warm. Then he returned and walked into the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. Then he called Gehazi and said, Call the Shunammite woman. So he called her, and when she had come to him, he said, Take up your son. Then she went in and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son, and went out. Furthermore, Elishua came to Gilgal again, and there was a scarcity in the land, and the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said to his servant, Set up a great pot, and seethe pottage for the sons of the prophets. And one went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and of it he gathered his lapful of wild gourds, and came and shred it into the pot of pottage. Because they did not know, they poured out for the men to eat. And it came to pass, as they were eating from the pottage, that they cried out and said, O man of Elohim, death is in the pot. And they could not eat. But he said, Then bring meal. And he cast it into the pot. And he said, Pour out for the people, so that they may eat. And there was no harm in the pot. Also, a man from Baal Shalisha came and brought the man of Elohim bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, and full heads of grain in its husks. And he said, Give to the people so that they may eat. And his servant said, Who will I set this before? 100 men? Again he spoke, Give the people so that they may eat. For thus saith Yahweh, They will eat and have leftovers. So he set it before them. Then they ate and had leftovers, according to the word of Yahweh. Chapter 5. Now Naaman, the captain of the host of the king of Aram, was a great and honorable man with his master. For by him Yahweh has delivered to Aram. Also he was a mighty man in valor, but he was a leper. Furthermore, Aram had gone out by companies, and had brought away captives out of the land of Yeshariel, a little maid, and she waited upon the wife of Naaman. And she said to her mistress, If only my lord went before the prophet that is in Shamarun, for he would heal him of his leprosy. Then someone went in and told his lord, saying, Thus and thus said the maid, who is from the land of Yeshariel. Therefore the king of Aram said, Go, and I will send a letter to the king of Yeshariel. So he departed and took 10 talents of silver and 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 changes of clothes with him. And he brought the letter to the king of Yeshariel, saying, Now, when this letter comes to you, behold, I have sent Naaman my servant to you, so that you may recover him of his leprosy. And it came to pass, when the king of Yeshariel read the letter, that he tore his clothes and said, Am I Elohim, to kill and to make alive, such that this man has sent a leprous man to me to heal? I pray you, consider and see how he seeks to quarrel against me. And it was when Elishua, the man of Elohim, had heard that the king of Yeshariel had tore his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, Why have you tore your clothes? Now let him come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Yeshariel. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariots, and stood at the door of the house of Elishua. And Elishua sent a messenger to him, saying, Go and wash in Yarden 7 times. Then your flesh will come to you again, and you will be clean. But Naaman was wroth, and went away, and said, Behold, I thought, surely he would come out to me, and stand, and call on the name of Yahweh his Elohim, and strike his hand over the place, and heal the leprosy. Are not Abna and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the rivers of Yeshariel? Can I not wash in them and be clean? Therefore he turned and went away in rage. However, his servants came near and spoke to him, and said, My father, if the prophet had told you to do a difficult thing, would you not have done it? How much more for when he says to you, Wash and be clean? Therefore he went down and dipped himself 7 times in Yarden, according to the words of the man of Elohim. Then his flesh came again, like the flesh of a little child. Thus he was clean. So he and his company returned to the man of Elohim, and stood before him. And he said, Behold, now I know that there is no deity in all the earth, but in Yeshariel. Now I pray you, take a blessing from your servant. But he said, As Yahweh lives, before whom I stand, I will receive nothing. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. However, Naaman said, I pray you, may your servant give as much as a pair of mules can carry of earth. For from now on your servant will not offer burnt offering nor sacrifice to other deities, but unto Yahweh. By this may Yahweh pardon your servant, so that when my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans upon my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, when I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, Yahweh will pardon your servant in this thing. Therefore he said to him, Go in peace. So he departed from him, a little way. But Gehazi, the servant of Elishua, the man of Elohim, said, Behold, my master has spared Naaman this Arami, in not receiving from his hand that which he brought. But as Yahweh lives, I will run after him, and take something from him. So Gehazi followed after Naaman, and when Naaman saw him running after him, he lifted off the chariot and met him, and asked, Is all well? And he answered, All is well. My master has sent me, saying, Behold, even now 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from Mount Apraim. I pray you, give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments. Therefore Naaman said, Be content, take 2 talents. And he urged him, and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags, with 2 changes of garments. Also he laid them upon 2 of his servants, and they carried them before him. And when he came to the tower, he took from their hand, and bestowed in the house. Then he let the men go, and they departed. Then he went in and stood before his master. And Elishua asked him, Where were you, Gehazi? And he answered, Your servant went nowhere. Then he said, Did my heart not leave when the man turned from his chariot to meet you? Is this a time to receive money? And to receive garments? And olive yards, and vineyards, and sheep, and oxen, and men servants, and maidservants? Therefore, the leprosy of Naaman will cling to you, and your seed forever. And he went out of his presence as leprous as snow. Chapter 6. And the sons of the prophet said to Elishua, Behold now, the place where we dwell with you is too tight for us. We pray you, let us go to Yarden, and there every man take a beam. And there let us make a place for us, where we may dwell. Therefore he answered, Go. Then someone said, I pray you, be content and come with your servants. So he answered, I will come. Therefore he went with them, and when they came to Yarden, they cut down wood. However, when someone was dropping a beam, the axe head fell into the water. Then he cried and said, Alas, Lord, for it was borrowed. So the man of Elohim asked, Where did it fall? And he showed him the place. Then he cut a stick and cast it there, and the iron floated. Therefore he said, Take it for yourself. So he put out his hand and took it. Furthermore, the king of Aram warred against Yeshariel, and took counsel with his servants, saying, In such and such place my camp will be. However, the man of Elohim sent to the king of Yeshariel, saying, Beware that you do not pass such a place, for there Aram will come down. And the king of Yeshariel sent to the place which the man of Elohim told him, and enlightened him. And we guarded there, not once nor twice. Therefore the heart of the king of Aram was very troubled because of this. And he called his servants and said to them, Will you not show me who among us is for the king of Yeshariel? And one of the servants said, No one, my lord, O king. However, Elishua, the prophet who is with Yeshariel, tells the king of Yeshariel the words that you speak in your bedchamber. Therefore he said, Go and spy where he is, so that I may send and fetch him. And it was told to him, saying, Behold, in Datan. Then he sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and encompassed the city. Furthermore, when the servant of the man of Elohim arose and went out, behold, an army surrounded the city, both with horses and chariots. Then his servant said to him, Alas, my master, what will we do? Therefore he answered, Do not fear, for more are with us than with them. Then Elishua prayed and said, Yahweh, I pray you, open his eyes so that he may see. Therefore Yahweh opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain that surrounded Elishua was full of horses and chariots of fire. And when they came down to him, Elishua prayed unto Yahweh, and said, Smite this people, I pray you, with blindness. Therefore he struck them with blindness, according to the word of Elishua. Then Elishua said to them, This is not the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. However, he led them to Shamarun. And it came to pass, when they came into Shamarun, that Elishua said, Yahweh, open their eyes so that they may see. Therefore Yahweh opened their eyes, and they saw. And behold, they were in the midst of Shamarun. Then, when the king of Yashar'el saw them, he asked Elishua, My father, should I strike them? However, he answered, You will not attack those who have been taken captive by your sword and bow. Set bread and water before them, so that they may eat and drink, and go to their master. Therefore he prepared a great provision for them, and when they had eaten and drank, he sent them away, and they went to their master. Furthermore, the troops of Aram did not come into the land of Yashar'el any more. Chapter 7. And it came to pass after this that Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, gathered his entire army, and went up and besieged Shamarun. And there was a great famine in Shamarun, and behold, they besieged it, until the head of an ass was 80 pieces of silver, and a fourth part of a cob of dove's dung was 5 pieces of silver. Furthermore, as the king of Yashar'el was passing by upon the wall, a woman cried to him, saying, Help, my lord, O king. And he said, If Yahweh does not help you out of the barn floor or out of the winepress, how will I help you? Then the king asked her, What ails you? So she answered, This woman said to me, Give your son, that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. So we boiled my son and ate him. Then on the next day I said to him, Give your son, so that we may eat him. But she has hidden her son. And it came to pass, when the king heard the words of the woman, that he tore his clothes. And he passed upon the wall, and the people looked, and saw within, sackcloth was upon his flesh. Then he said, Elohim do to me, and more also, if the head of Elishua the son of Shaphath stands upon him today. Furthermore, Elishua sat in his house, and the elders sat with him, and the king sent a man from before him. But before the messenger came to him, he said to the elders, See how this son of a murderer has sent to take away my head? Behold, when the messenger comes, shut the door, and hold him fast at the door. Is the sound of his master's feet not behind him? And while he yet talked with him, behold, the messenger came down to him, and said, Surely this evil is from Yahweh. Why should I hope for Yahweh any longer? Then Elishua said, Hear the word of Yahweh. Thus saith Yahweh, Tomorrow about this time a measure of flour will be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, in the gate of Shamarun. Then an officer, on whose hand the king leaned, answered the man of Elohim and said, Behold, this thing might happen if Yahweh makes windows in the heavens. And he said, Behold, you will see it with your eyes, but will not eat of it. Furthermore, there were 4 leprous men at the entrance of the gate, and they said one to another, Why do we sit here until we die? If we say, Let us enter into the city, when the famine is in the city, then we will die there. Also, if we sit still here, we will die. Now therefore, come, let us fall to the army of Aram. If they save us alive, we will live, and if they kill us, we will only die." Therefore they arose during the twilight to go to the camp of Aram. And when they came to the outermost part of the camp of Aram, behold, no man was there. For Jehovah had made the host of Aram to hear a noise of chariots and a noise of horses, the noise of a great army. And they said one to another, "Look, the king of Yashar'el has hired against us. The kings of the Hittite and the kings of Mitzrayim have come upon us." Therefore during the twilight they arose and fled, and left their tents, and their horses, and their asses. The camp was like it was, and they fled for their life. And when the lepers came to the outermost part of the camp, they went into a tent, and ate and drank. Also they carried silver and gold and raiment, and went and hid it. Then they came again, and entered into another tent, and carried and went and hid it. Then they said one to another, "We do not do good. Today is a day of good tidings, and we hold our peace. If we tarry until morning light, some mischief will come upon us. Now therefore come, so that we may go and tell the king's household." Therefore they went and called to the porter of the city, and they told them, saying, "We came to the camp of Aram, and behold, no man was there, nor voice of Adam, only tied horses and tied asses, and the tents like they were." And he called the porters, and they told it to the king's house within. And the king arose during the night, and said to his servants, "Now I will show you what Aram has done to us. They know that we are hungry. Therefore they have gone out of the camp to hide themselves in the field, saying, 'When they come out of the city, we will catch them alive, and get into the city.'" And one of his servants answered and said, "I pray you, let us take 5 of the horses that remain, which are left in the city. Behold, they are like all the multitude of Yashar'el that are left in it. Behold, they are even like all the multitude of the Yashar'eli who are consumed. Therefore let us send and see." So they took 2 chariot horses, and the king sent after the army of Aram, saying, "Go and see." And they went after them to Yarden, and behold, the entire way was full of garments and vessels, which Aram had cast away in their haste. And the messengers returned and told the king. Therefore the people went out and plundered the tents of Aram. Then a measure of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to the word of Jehovah. And the king appointed the officer on whose hand he leaned to have the charge of the gate. And the people trampled upon him in the gate, and he died, like the man of Elohim had said, who spoke when the king came down to him. And it came to pass, just like the man of Elohim had spoken to the king, saying, 2 measures of barley for a shekel, and a measure of fine flour for a shekel, will be tomorrow about this time in the gate of Shamarun. And the officer answered the man of Elohim and said, "Now behold, such a thing might happen if Yahweh will open the windows of the heavens." And he said, "Behold, you will see it with your eyes, but you will not eat it." And so it fell upon him, because in the gate the people trampled upon him. Thus he died. Chapter 8. Then Elishua spoke to the woman whose son he had restored to life, saying, "Arise and go and sojourn wherever you can sojourn, you and your household, for Yahweh has called for a famine. Also it will be upon the land for 7 years." Therefore the woman arose and went after the saying of the man of Elohim. And she went with her household, and sojourned in the land of the Philistine for 7 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 7 years, that the woman returned from the land of the Philistine. And she went forth to cry to the king for her house and for her land. Furthermore, the king was talking with Gehazi, the servant of the man of Elohim, saying, I pray you, tell me all the great things that Elishua has done. And it came to pass, as he was telling the king how he had restored a dead body to life, that behold, the woman whose son was restored to life cried to the king for her house and for her land. Therefore Gehazi said, My lord, O king, this is the woman and her son, whom Elishua restored to life. And when the king asked the woman, she told him. So the king appointed to her a certain officer, saying, Restore all that was hers, and all the fruits of the field, since the day that she left the land, even until now. Furthermore, Elishua came to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad, the king of Aram, was sick. And it was told to him, saying, The man of Elohim has come here. So the king said to Hazael, Take a present in your hand, and go meet the man of Elohim, and inquire of Yahweh by him, saying, Will I recover of this disease? Therefore Hazael went to meet him, and took a present with him, all the bounty of Damascus, the burden of 40 camels, and came and stood before him, and said, Your son Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, has sent me to you, saying, Will I recover from this disease? Then Elishua said to him, Go and say to him, Surely you should recover. However, Yahweh has showed me that he will surely die. And he set his face firmly until he was ashamed. Then the man of Elohim wept. So Hazael asked, Why do you weep, my lord? And he answered, Because I know the evil that you will do to the children of Yishariel. You will set their strongholds on fire, and you will slay their young men with the sword, and will dash their children, and rip up their women with child. Then Hazael asked, But why? Is your servant a dog that he would do this great thing? And Elishua answered, Yahweh has showed me that you will be king over Aram. Then he departed from Elishua, and came to his master, who asked him, What did Elishua say to you? And he answered, He told me that you will surely recover. And it came to pass on the morrow that he took a thick cloth and dipped it in water and spread it upon his face. Thus he died, and Hazael reigned in his stead. And in the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Yishariel, Jehoshaphat was the king of Yehuda. Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Yehuda, began to reign. He was 32 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the ways of the kings of Yishariel, just like the house of Ahab, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife, and he did evil in the sight of Yahweh. However, Yahweh would not destroy Yehuda for the sake of David his servant, as he promised a lamp to his children for all the days. In his days, Adum revolted from under the hand of Yehuda, and made a king over themselves. So Joram went over to Zair, and all the chariots with him. And he rose by night, and struck the Adum, which encompassed around him. Then the captains of the chariots and the people fled into their tents. However, Adum revolted under the hand of Yehuda until today. Also, Libnah revolted during the same time. And the rest of the acts of Joram and all that he did, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the Kings of Yehuda? Therefore Joram slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And Ahaz Yehu his son reigned in his stead. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Yishariel, Ahaz Yehu, the son of Jehoram, king of Yehuda, began to reign. Ahaz Yehu was 22 years old when he began to reign. And he reigned 1 year in Yerushalayim. And his mother's name was Ataliyehu, the daughter of Omri, king of Yeshariel. And he walked in the way of the house of Ahab, and did evil in the sight of Yehovah, like the house of Ahab, for he was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. And he went with Uram, the son of Ahab, to war against Hazael, king of Aram, in Ramat of Gilead. And Aram wounded Uram. And King Yoram went back to be healed in Azrael of the wounds which Aram had given him at Ramah, when he fought against Hazael, king of Aram. And Ahaz-Yehu, the son of Yehoram, king of Yehuda, went down to see Uram, the son of Ahab, in Yazrael, because he was sick. Chapter 9. And Elishua the prophet called one of the children of the prophets, and said to him, Gird up your loins, and take this box of oil in your hand, and go to Ramat Gilead. And when you get to the named place, then look for Yehuah, the son of Yehushapath, the son of Nimshi. Moreover, go in and make him rise up from his brethren. Then carry him to an inner chamber. And take the box of oil, and pour it on his head, and say, Thus saith Yehuah, I have anointed you king over Yeshariel. Then open the door and flee, and do not tarry. So the young man, the prophet, went to Ramat Gilead. And when he came, behold, the captains of the army were sitting. And he said, I have a word for you, O captain. And Yehuah said, Unto whom of all us? And he answered, To you, O captain. Then he arose and went into the house, and he poured oil upon his head, and said to him, Thus saith Yehuah Elohim of Yeshariel, I have anointed you king over the people of Yehuah, over Yeshariel, and you will strike the house of Ahab, your master, so that I may avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of Yehuah, from the hand of Jezebel. For the whole house of Ahab will perish. I will cut off from Ahab him who pisses against the wall, and him who is shut up and left in Yeshariel. And I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and the house of Raasha, the son of Achiah. And the dogs will eat Jezebel in the portion of Yezrael. Then Yehuah came out to the servants of his Lord, and it was asked, Is it well? Why did this madman come to you? And he answered them, You know the man and his communication. And they said, No, tell us now. And he said, He spoke thus and thus to me, saying, Thus saith Yehuah, I have anointed you king over Yeshariel. Then they hurried, and each man took his garment, and put it under him on top of the stairs, and blew with trumpets, saying, Yehuah is king. Therefore Yehuah the son of Yehushapath, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Uram. Now Uram had kept Ramat Gilead, he and all Yeshariel, because of Hazael, king of Aram. However, King Yoram had returned to be healed in Yazrael of the wounds which Aram had given him, when he fought with Hazael, king of Aram. And Yehuah said, If this is your minds, let no one go forth to escape out of the city to go tell it in Yazrael. Furthermore, Yehuah rode in a chariot and went to Yazrael, for Uram laid there. And Ahaz-Yehu, king of Yehuda, had come down to see Uram. And a watchman stood on the tower of Yazrael, and spied the company of Yehuah as he came, and said, I see a company. And Uram said, Take a horseman, and send it to meet them, and let him say, Is it peace? Then someone went on horseback to meet him, and said, Thus saith the king, Is it peace? And Yehuah said, What have you to do with peace? Turn yourself and follow me. Therefore the watchman told, saying, The messenger went to meet them, but he does not come back again. So he sent a second on horseback, who came to them and asked, Thus saith the king, Is it peace? And Jehu answered, What do you have to do with peace? Turn yourself and follow me. Then the watchman told, saying, Even he came to them, yet does not come again. And the driving is like the driving of Jehu the son of Nimshi, for he drives furiously. And Yoram said, Make ready. And his chariot was made ready. And Yoram, king of Yishareal, and Ahaz Jehu, king of Yehuda, went out, each in his chariot. And they went out against Jehu, and met him in the portion of Naboth, the Yezreeli. And it came to pass when Yoram saw Jehu, that he asked, Is it peace, Jehu? And he answered, What peace, so long as there are the whoredoms of your mother Jezebel and her many witchcrafts? Therefore Yoram turned his hands and fled, and said to Ahaz Jehu, Treason, Ahaz Jehu. Then Jehu drew a bow with his full strength, and struck Jehoram between his arms, and the arrow went out of his heart. Then he sunk down in his chariot. Also it was said to Bidkar, his captain, Take up, cast him into the portion of the field of Naboth, the Yezreeli. For remember how when you and I rode together after Ahab his father, Jehu laid this claim upon him. Surely yesterday I have seen the blood of Naboth, and the blood of his sons, saith Jehu, and I will repay you in this plot, saith Jehu. Now therefore, take, cast him into the plot according to the word of Jehu. But when Ahaz Jehu the king of Yehuda saw, he fled by the way of the garden house. And Jehu followed after him, and said, Also smite him in the chariot at the going up of Gur. This is by Iblaam. And he fled to Megiddo. Thus he died there. And his servants carried him in the chariot to Jerusalem, and buried him in his sepulchre with his fathers in the city of David. Furthermore, in the 11th year of Yoram, the son of Ahab, Ahaz Jehu began to reign over Yehuda. And when Jehu had come to Yisrael, Jezebel heard, and she painted her face and adorned her head, and looked out a window. And as Jehu entered in at the gate, she said, Was there peace in Zimri, who slew his master? Therefore he lifted up his face to the window and said, Who is with me? Who? Then 2 or 3 eunuchs looked out to him. Therefore he said, Throw her down. Then they threw her down, and her blood sprinkled on the wall and on the horses. Then he trampled her under foot. And when he had come in, he ate and drank, and said, Now, go see this accursed woman, and bury her, for she is the king's daughter. And they went to bury her, but they found nothing of her than the skull, and the feet, and the palms of her hands. Therefore they came again, and told him. And he said, This is the word of Jehu, which he spoke by his servant Eliyahu, the Tishbe, saying, In the portion of Yisrael, dogs will eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the carcass of Jezebel will be like the dung of the face of the field in the portion of Yisrael, so that they will not say, This is Jezebel. Chapter 10. And Ahab had 70 sons in Shamarun. Moreover, Jehu wrote letters, and sent to Shamarun, to the rulers of Azrael, to the elders, and to the guardians of Ahab, saying, Now, as soon as this letter comes to you, seeing that the sons of your master are with you, there are chariots and horses with you, also a fenced city and armor, look for the best and most upright of your master's sons, and set him upon the throne of his father, and fight for the house of your master. However, they were very afraid and said, Behold, 2 kings did not stand before him. How then will we stand? And he who was over the house, and he who was over the city, the elders also, and the guardians sent to Jehu, saying, We are your servants, and will do all that you ask of us. We will not make any king. Do what is good in your eyes. Therefore he wrote a letter to them a second time, saying, If you are mine, and will hearken to my voice, take the heads of the men, the sons of your master, and come to me to Yezreel by this time tomorrow. Now the sons of the king, 70 people, were with the great men of the city, who brought them up. And it came to pass when the letter came to them, that they took the sons of the king, and slew 70 people, and put their heads in baskets, and sent them to Yezreel. Then the messenger came and told him, saying, They have brought the heads of the sons of the king. And he said, Lay them in 2 heaps at the entrance of the gate, until morning. And it came to pass in the morning that he went out and stood and said to all the people, You are righteous. Behold, I conspired against my master and slew him. But who slew all these? Now know that nothing of the word of Jehu will fall to the earth, which Jehu spoke concerning the house of Ahab, for Jehu has done that which he spoke by his servant Eliyahu. Then Jehu slew all who remained of the house of Ahab in Yezreel, and all his great men, and his kinfolks, and his priests, until he left no one remaining of him. And he arose and departed, and came to Shamarun. He was at the shearing house in the way. Jehu met with the brethren of Ahaz-Jehu, king of Yehudah, and said, Who are you? And they answered, We are the brethren of Ahaz-Jehu, and we go down to salute the children of the king and the children of the queen. Therefore he said, Take them alive. And they took them alive and slew them at the pit of the shearing house, 42 men. He did not leave any of them. He lighted on Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, to meet him. And he saluted him and said to him, Is your heart right, as my heart is with your heart? And Jehonadab answered, It is. Then Jehu said, If it is, give your hand. Therefore he gave his hand. And he took him up to himself into the chariot. Then he said, Come with me, and see my zeal for Jehu. So they made him ride in his chariot. And when he came to Shamarun, he slew all who remained in Ahab in Shamarun, until he had destroyed him according to the saying of Jehu, which he spoke to Eliyahu. And Jehu gathered all the people together, and said to them, Ahab served Baal a little. Jehu will serve him more. Now therefore, call to me all the prophets of Baal, all his servants, and all his priests. Let no one be missing, for I have a great sacrifice to Baal. Whoever is missing, he will not live. But Jehu did this with subtlety, for the intention that he might destroy the worshippers of Baal. And Jehu said, Proclaim a solemn assembly for Baal. And they proclaimed it. Then Jehu sent throughout all Yisrael, and all the worshippers of Baal came, so that there was not a man left who did not come. And they came into the house of Baal, and the house of Baal was full from one end to the other. And he said to him who was over the wardrobe, Bring forth vestments for all the worshippers of Baal. And he brought them forth vestments. Then Jehu and Jehonadab the son of Rechab went into the house of Baal, and he said to the worshippers of Baal, Search and look that there are none of the servants of Jehu here with you, but the worshippers of Baal only. And when they went in to offer sacrifices and ascension offerings, Jehu appointed 80 men outside and said, If any of the men whom I have brought into your hands escape, he who lets him go, his life will be for the life of him. And it came to pass, as soon as he had finished offering the burnt offering, that Yehu said to the guard and to the captains, "Go in and slay them. Let no one come out." Therefore they struck them with the edge of the sword, and the guard and the captains cast out, and went to the city of the house of Baal. And they brought forth the monuments out of the house of Baal, and burned them. And they broke down the monument of Baal, and broke down the house of Baal, and made it a lavatory until today. Thus Yehu destroyed Baal out of Yeshareal. However, the sins of Yerobeam, the son of Nebat, who made Yeshareal to sin, Yehu did not depart from following them, the golden calves that were in Beit Al and that were in Dan. Furthermore, Yehu said to Yehu, "Because you have done well in executing what is right in my eyes, having done to the house of Ahab according to all that is in my heart, your children will sit on the throne of Yeshareal until the 4th generation." But Yehu took no heed to walk in the teaching of Yehu, Elohim of Yeshareal, with all his heart, for he did not depart from the sins of Yerobeam, which made Yeshareal to sin. In those days Yehu began to cut Yeshareal, and Hazael struck them in all the coasts of Yeshareal. From Yarden eastward, all the land of Gilead, the Gadi, and the Reubeni, and the Menashe, from Aruar, which is by the river Arnon, until Gilead and Bashan. Now the rest of the acts of Yehu, and all that he did, and all his might, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the Kings of Yeshareal? And Yehu slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Shamerun. And Yehoahaz his son reigned in his stead. And the time that Yehu reigned over Yeshareal in Shamarun was 28 years. Chapter 11. And when Ataliehu, the mother of Ahazyehu, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal seed. But Yehusheba, the daughter of King Uram, sister of Ahazyehu, took Joash, the son of Ahazyehu, and stole him from among the sons of the king who were being slain. And they hid him and his nurse, in the bedchamber of Ataliehu, so that he was not slain. Moreover, he was hidden with her in the house for 6 years. And Ataliehu reigned over the land. And the 7th year Yehoiada sent and fetched the rulers over the 100s, with the captains and the guard, and brought them to him into the house of Yehu, and made a covenant with them, and took an oath of them in the house of Yehu, and showed them the son of the king. Then he commanded them, saying, "This is the thing that you will do. A 3rd part of you who enter in on the Shabbat will still be keepers of the watch of the house of the king, and a 3rd part of you will be at the gate of Sur, and a 3rd part at the gate behind the guard. Thus you will keep watch of the house, so that it is not broken down. And 2 parts of all who go forth on the Shabbat, even they will keep the watch of the house of Yehu for the king. Also you will encompass the king round about, every man with his weapons in his hand, and he who comes within the ranges, let him be slain. Also be with the king as he goes out, and as he comes in." Therefore the captains over the 100s did according to everything that Yehoiada the priest commanded. And each man took his men who came on the Shabbat, with those who would go out on the Shabbat, and came to Yehoiada the priest. Then to the captains over the 100s the priest gave the spears and the shields of King Dawid, which were in the temple of Yehu. And the guard stood around about the king, each man with his weapons in his hand, from the right corner of the temple to the left corner of the temple, by the altar and by the temple. Then he brought forth the son of the king, and put the crown upon him, and the testimony, and they made him king, and anointed him. And they clapped their hands, and said, "Elohim, save the king." And when Ataliehu heard the noise of the guard of the people, she came to the people into the temple of Yahweh. And when she looked, behold, the king stood by a pillar, as the manner was, and the captains and the trumpeters were by the king, and all the people from the land rejoiced, and blew with trumpets. And Ataliehu tore her clothes, and cried, Treason! Treason! But Yehoiada the priest commanded the captains of the hundreds and officers of the army, and said to them, Take her outside from the house under guard, and those who follow her kill with the sword. For the priests had said, Do not slay her in the house of Yahweh. Therefore they laid hands upon her, and she went by the way that the horses came into the house of the king, and there she was slain. And Yehoiada made a covenant between Yahweh and the king and the people, so that they would be the people of Yahweh, also between the king and the people. And all the people from the land went into the house of Baal and broke it down. His altars and his images were broken in pieces thoroughly, and slew Matan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. And the priest appointed officers over the house of Yahweh. Also he took the rulers over the hundreds, and the captains, and the guard, and all the people from the land. And they brought down the king from the house of Yahweh, and came by the way of the gate of the guard to the king's house. And he sat on the throne of the kings. And all the people from the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet. And they slew Ataliehu with the sword beside the house of the king. Jehoash was 7 years old when he began to reign. Chapter 12. In the 7th year of Yahweh, Jehoash began to reign, and he reigned for 40 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Zibiah of Beersheba. And Jehoash did right in the sight of Yahweh all the days in which Jehoiada the priest instructed him. But the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places. And Jehoash said to the priests, All the money of the dedicated things that are brought into the house of Yahweh, the money of everyone who passes, the money that every man has set, all the money that comes into any man's heart to bring to the house of Yahweh, let the priests take it to themselves, every man of his acquaintance, and let them repair the breaches of the house, wherever any breach is found. Thus it was during the 23rd year of King Jehoash, the priests had not repaired the breaches of the house. Then King Jehoash called for Jehoiada the priest, and the priests, and said to them, Why have you not repaired the breaches of the house? Now therefore receive no money for your acquaintance, but deliver it for the breaches of the house. Therefore the priests consented to receive no money from the people, nor to repair the breaches of the house. However, Jehoiada the priest took a chest and bore a hole in its lid, and set it beside the altar, on the right side as one comes into the house of Yahweh. Then the priests who kept the door put all the money that was brought into the house of Yahweh into it. And it happened, when they saw that there was much money in the chest, that the king's scribe and the high priest came up, and they put it up in bags, and appointed the money that was found in the house of Yahweh. And they gave the money, being appointed, into the hands of those who did the work, who had the oversight of the house of Yahweh, and they laid it out to the carpenters and builders, who worked upon the house of Yahweh, and to the masons and the stonecutters, and to buy timber, and cut stone to repair the breaches of the house of Yahweh, and for all that was laid out for the house to repair it. However, from the money brought into the house of Yahweh, bowls of silver, snuffers, basins, trumpets, any vessels of gold, or vessels of silver were not made, for the house of Yahweh, but they gave it to the workmen, and with it they repaired the house of Yahweh. Moreover, they did not reckon with the men into whose hand they delivered the money to be given on workmen, for they dealt faithfully. The trespass money and the sin money was not brought into the house of Yahweh, it belonged to the priests. Then Ahazel, king of Aram, went up and fought against Gath and took it. And Ahazel set his face to go up to Jerusalem. Therefore Jehoash, king of Yehuda, took all the hallowed things that Jehoshaphat and Jehoram and Ahaz-Yehu, his fathers, kings of Yehuda, had dedicated, and his own hallowed things, and all the gold found in the treasures of the house of Yahweh, and in the king's house, and sent it to Hazael, king of Aram. Then he went away from Jerusalem. And the rest of the acts of Joash, and all that he did, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the kings of Yehuda? However, his servants arose and made a conspiracy and slew Joash in the house of Milah, which goes down to Silah. For Yisachar, the son of Shemaat, and Jehuzabad, the son of Shumer, his servants struck him. Thus he died, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David. Then Amaziah, his son, reigned in his stead. Chapter 13. In the 23rd year of Joash, the son of Achiz-Yehu, king of Yehuda, Jehoahaz, the son of Yehuah, began to reign over Yeshariel in Shamarun for 17 years. And he did evil in the sight of Yehuah, and followed the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Yeshariel to sin. He did not depart from it. And the anger of Yehuah was kindled against Yeshariel. Therefore he delivered them into the hand of Hazael, king of Aram, and into the hand of Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael, all the days. However, Jehoahaz besought Yehuah. Therefore Yehuah hearkened to him, for he saw the oppression of Yeshariel, because the king of Aram oppressed them. And Yehuah gave Yeshariel a savior, so that they went out from under the hand of Aram. Then the children of Yeshariel dwelt in their tents like previously. Nevertheless, they did not depart from the sins of the house of Jeroboam, who made Yeshariel sin, walking in it. Also the Asherah remained in Shamarun, nor did he leave the people of Jehoahaz, but 50 horsemen, and 10 chariots, and 10,000 footmen. For the king of Aram had destroyed them, and had made them like the dust by threshing. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoahaz, and all that he did, and his might, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the kings of Yeshariel? Moreover, Jehoahaz slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Shamarun, and Joash his son reigned in his stead. In the 37th year of Joash, king of Yehuda, Joash the son of Jehoahaz began to reign over Yeshariel in Shamarun for 16 years. However, he did evil in the sight of Yehuah. He did not depart from all the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Yeshariel sin. He walked in it. And the rest of the acts of Joash, and all that he did, and his might in which he fought against Amaziah, king of Yehuda, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the kings of Yeshariel? Now Elishua fell sick of the sickness in which he died, and Joash the king of Yeshariel came down to him, and wept over his face, and said, O my father, the chariot of Yeshariel and its horsemen. And Elishua said to him, Take a bow and arrows. Therefore he took a bow and arrows for himself. Then he said to the king of Yeshariel, Put your hand upon the bow. And he put his hand upon it. Then Elishua put his hands upon the king's hands. And he said, Open the window eastward. So he opened it. Then Elishua said, "Shoot." And he shot. Then he said, "This is the arrow of the deliverance of Yahweh, and the arrow of the deliverance from Aram. For you will strike Aram in a peck, until you have consumed." Then he said, "Take the arrows." And he took them. Then he said to the king of Yeshariel, "Smite upon the ground." Therefore he struck 3 times and stayed. Then the man of Elohim was angry with him and said, "You should have stricken 5 or 6 times. Then you would have smitten Aram until you had consumed it. However, now you will strike Aram 3 times." Then Elishua died, and they buried him. Furthermore, the troop of Moab invaded the land at the coming of the year. And it came to pass, as they buried a man, that, behold, they spied a troop of men, and they cast the man into the sepulchre of Elishua. And when the man was let down, and touched the bones of Elishua, he revived, and stood up on his feet. But Ahazael, king of Aram, oppressed Yeshariel all the days of Jehu-Ahaz. But Ahazael, king of Aram, oppressed Yeshariel all the days of Jehu-Ahaz. And Yahweh was gracious to them, and had compassion on them, and had respect for them, because of his covenant with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob. Therefore he would not destroy them, nor cast them from his presence even now. So Ahazael, king of Aram, died, and Ben-Hadad, his son, reigned in his stead. And Jehoash, the son of Jehu-Ahaz, took from the hand of Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael, the cities again, which he had taken out of the hand of Jehu-Ahaz, his father, by war. Joash beat him 3 times and recovered the cities of Yeshariel. Chapter 14. In the 2nd year of Joash, the son of Jehu-Ahaz, king of Yeshariel, Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Yehuda, reigned. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 28 years. And the name of his mother was Jehoadan of Jerusalem. And he did right in the sight of Yahweh, but not like David his father. He did according to all things like Joash his father. However, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. And it came to pass, as soon as the kingdom was confirmed in his hand, that he slew the servants who had slain the king, his father. Furthermore, he did not execute the children of the murderers, according to that which was written in the Sefer of the teaching of Moshe, in which Yahweh commanded, saying, "The fathers will not be put to death for the children, nor will the children be put to death for the fathers, but every man will be put to death for his own sin." He slew 10,000 of Edom in the valley of Salt, and took Selah by war, and its name is called Yakat-al to this day. Furthermore, Amaziah sent messengers to Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, the son of Jehuah, king of Yeshariel, saying, "Come, let us look one another in the face." Therefore Jehoash, king of Yeshariel, sent to Amaziah, king of Yehuda, saying, "The thistle that was in Lebanon sent to the cedar that was in Lebanon, saying, 'Give your daughter to my son for a wife.' However, a wild beast passed by that which was in Lebanon, and trampled down the thistle. Truly you have smitten Edom, and your heart is lifted up. Celebrate and stay at home. For why should you meddle with disaster, such that you fall, you and Yehuda with you?" However, Amaziah would not listen. Therefore Jehoash, king of Yeshariel, went up. Then he and Amaziah, king of Yehuda, looked one another in the face at Beit Shemesh, which belonged to Yehuda. But Yehuda was defeated in the presence of Yeshariel. Therefore every man fled to his tents. And Jehoash, king of Yeshariel, took Amaziah, king of Yehuda, the son of Jehoash, the son of Ahaz Yehu, at Beit Shemesh. Then he came to Yerushalayim and broke down the walls of Yerushalayim, 400 cubits, from the gate of Abraham to the corner gate. Moreover, he took all the gold and silver, and all the vessels that were found in the house of Yahweh, and the treasures in the king's house, and hostages. Then he returned to Shamerun. Now the rest of the acts of Yehoash which he did, and his might, and how he fought with Amaziah, king of Yehuda, are they not written in the sefer of the chronicles of the kings of Yeshareal? Furthermore, Yehoash slept with his fathers, and was buried in Shamerun, with the kings of Yeshareal. Then Yerebeam his son, and Amaziah the son of Joash, king of Yehuda, lived after the death of Yehoash, son of Jehoahaz, king of Yeshareal, for 15 years. And the rest of the acts of Amaziah, are they not written in the sefer of the chronicles of the kings of Yehuda? Now they made a conspiracy against him in Yerushalayim, so he fled to Lachish. But they sent after him to Lachish, and slew him there. Then they brought him upon horses, and he was buried at Yerushalayim with his fathers in the city of David. Therefore all the people of Yehuda took Azariah, who was 16 years old, and made him king instead of his father Amaziah. He built Ailut and restored it to Yehuda. After this the king slept with his fathers. In the 15th year of Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Yehuda, Yerebeam, the son of Joash, king of Yeshareal, began to reign in Shamerun for 41 years. However, he did evil in the sight of Yahweh. He did not depart from all the sins of Yerebeam, the son of Nebat, who made Yeshareal to sin. He restored the coast of Yeshareal from the entering in of Hamat to the sea of the plain, according to the word of Yahweh, Elohim of Yeshareal, which he spoke by the hand of his servant Yunah, the son of Amati, the prophet, who was at Gat Geber. For Yahweh saw the affliction of Yeshareal was very bitter, and none were restrained, and none were free, and there was no help for Yeshareal. However, Yahweh did not say that he would blot out the name of Yeshareal from under the heavens. Therefore he saved them by the hand of Yerebeam, the son of Joash. Now the rest of the acts of Yerebeam, and all that he did, and his might, how he warred, and how he recovered Damascus and Hamat from Yehuda under Yeshareal, are they not written in the sefer of the chronicles of the kings of Yeshareal? Therefore Yerebeam slept with his fathers, with the kings of Yeshareal, and Zechariah his son reigned in his stead. Chapter 15. During the 27th year of Yerebeam, king of Yeshareal, Azar-Yehu, son of Amaziah, king of Yehuda, began to reign. He was 16 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years in Yerushalayim, and the name of his mother was Yekul Yehu of Yerushalayim. And he did right in the sight of Yahweh, according to all that his father Amaziah had done, except that the high places were not removed. The people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. Moreover, Yahweh struck the king, so that he was a leper until the day of his death. Therefore he dwelt in an isolated house, and Yotam, the son of the king, was over the house, judging the people from the land. And the rest of the acts of Azar-Yehu, and all that he did, are they not written in the sefer of the chronicles of the kings of Yehuda? Furthermore, Azar-Yehu slept with his fathers, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David. Then Yotam, his son, reigned in his stead. During the 38th year of Azar-Yehu, king of Yehuda, Zechariah, the son of Yerebeam, reigned over Yeshareal in Shamerun for 6 months. However, he did evil in the sight of Yahweh, like his fathers had done. He did not depart from the sins of Yerebeam, the son of Nebat, who made Yeshareal to sin. Therefore Shallum, the son of Yabesh, conspired against him, and struck him before the people, and slew him, and reigned in his stead. And the rest of the acts of Zechariah, behold, they are written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the Kings of Yeshariel. This was the word of Yehuah, which he spoke to Yehuah, saying, Your sons will sit in the throne of Yeshariel until the 4th. Thus it came to pass. Shallum, the son of Yabesh, began to reign during the 39th year of Uzziah, king of Yehudah, and he reigned a full month in Shamarun. For Menachem, the son of Gadi, went up to Tirzah, and came to Shamarun, and struck Shallum, the son of Yabesh, in Shallum. Also he slew him, and reigned in his stead. And the rest of the acts of Shallum, and the conspiracy that he made, behold, they are written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the Kings of Yeshariel. Then Menachem struck Tipsach, and all who were in it, and its borders from Tirzah, because they did not surrender. Therefore he attacked. He ripped up all the women who were in it. During the 39th year of Azaryehu, king of Yehudah, Menachem, the son of Gadi, began to reign over Yeshariel for 10 years in Shamarun. However, he did evil in the sight of Yehuah. He did not depart from the sins of Yerobeam, the son of Nebat, who made Yeshariel to sin all his days. Pul, the king of Ashur, came against the land. Therefore Menachem gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver, so that his hand might be with him to confirm the kingdom under his control. Therefore Menachem brought the money from Yeshariel, from all the mighty men of wealth, 50 shekels of silver from each man, to give to the king of Ashur. Then the king of Ashur turned back and did not stay in the land. And the rest of the acts of Menachem and all that he did, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the Kings of Yeshariel? Furthermore, Menachem slept with his fathers, and Pekahiah, his son, reigned in his stead. During the 15th year of Azaryehu, king of Yehudah, Pekahiah, the son of Menachem, began to reign over Yeshariel in Shamarun for 2 years. However, he did what was evil in the sight of Yehuah, and did not depart from the sins of Yerobeam, the son of Nebat, who made Yeshariel to sin. But a captain of Pekah, the son of Ramal Yehu, conspired against him with Argob and Aryeh, and 50 men of Gilead with him. And he struck him in Shamarun, in the palace of the house of the king. Then he killed him and reigned in his place. And the rest of the acts of Pekahiah, and all that he did, behold, they are written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the Kings of Yeshariel. During the 52nd year of Azaryehu, king of Yehudah, Pekah, the son of Ramal Yehu, began to reign over Yeshariel in Shamarun for 20 years. And he did evil in the sight of Yehuah. He did not depart from the sins of Yerobeam, the son of Nebat, who made Yeshariel to sin. During the days of Pekah, king of Yeshariel, he came to Tiglat-Pileser of Ashur, and took Aiyun, and Habel Beit Ma'akah, and Yanuch, and Kudesh, and Chatzor, and Gilead, and Galilah, and the land of Naphtali, and carried them captive to Ashur. Then Hushai, the son of Allah, made a conspiracy against Pekah, the son of Ramal Yehu. Also he attacked him and slew him, and reigned in his stead during the 20th year of Utam, the son of Uzziah. And the rest of the acts of Pekah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the Kings of Yeshariel. During the 2nd year of Pekah, the son of Ramal Yehu, king of Yeshariel, Utam, the king of Uzziah, king of Yehudah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 16 years in Yerushalayim. And the name of his mother was Yerusha, the daughter of Zadok. And he did right in the sight of Yehuah. He did according to all that his father Uzziah had done. However, the high places were not removed. The people still sacrificed and burned incense in the high places. He built the upper gate of the house of Yahweh. Now the rest of the acts of Yotam and all that he did, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the kings of Yehudah? During those days, Yahweh began to send Rezin, the king of Aram, and Pekach, the king of Ramal Yehu, against Yehudah. Furthermore, Yotam slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, his father. And Ahaz, his son, reigned in his stead. Chapter 16. During the 17th year of Pekach, the son of Ramal Yehu, Ahaz, the son of Yotam, king of Yehudah, began to reign. Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 16 years in Yerushalayim. However, he did not do right in the sight of Yahweh, his Elohim, like David, his father. But he walked in the way of the kings of Yeshariel. Also, his son passed through the fire, according to the abominations of the nations of Yahweh. Also, his son passed through the fire, according to the abominations of the nations that Yahweh cast out from before the children of Yeshariel. And he sacrificed and burned incense in the high places, and on the hills, and under every green tree. Furthermore, Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekach, son of Ramal Yehu, king of Yeshariel, came to Yerushalayim to war. And they besieged Ahaz, but they could not overcome. And at that time Rezin, king of Aram, recovered Ailut for Aram, and drove the Yehudim from Ailut. Moreover, Aram came to Ailut and dwell there to this day. Then Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglat-Pileser, king of Ashur, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Aram, and out of the hand of the king of Yeshariel, who have risen up against me. Also Ahaz took the silver and gold that was found in the house of Yahweh, and from the treasures of the house of the king, and he sent the present to the king of Ashur. Therefore the king of Ashur hearkened to him. For the king of Ashur went up against Demeshech, and took it, and carried captives to Kor, and slew Rezin. Moreover, King Ahaz went to Demeshech, and met Tiglat-Pileser, king of Ashur, and saw an altar that was at Demeshech. Then King Ahaz sent the design of the altar, and its pattern, according to all its workmanship, to Auriah the priest. And Auriah the priest built an altar according to all that King Ahaz had sent from Demeshech. Moreover, Auriah the priest made it before King Ahaz came from Demeshech. And when the king had come from Demeshech, the king saw the altar. Then the king approached to the altar and offered upon it. Therefore he burnt his burnt offering and his grain offering, and poured his drink offering, and sprinkled the blood of his sacrifices of restoration upon the altar. Also he brought the copper altar, which was before Yahweh, from the forefront of the house, from between the altar and the house of Yahweh, and put it on the north side of the altar. Then King Ahaz commanded Auriah the priest, saying, Upon the great altar burn the morning offering, and the evening grain offering, and the king's burnt offering, and his grain offering, and the burnt offering of all the people from the land, and their grain offering, and their drink offerings, and upon it sprinkle all the blood of the burnt offering, and all the blood of the sacrifice. Also the copper altar will be for me to inquire. Thus Auriah the priest did according to all that King Ahaz commanded. Also King Ahaz cut off the borders of the base, and removed the laver from off them, and took the sea down from off the copper oxen that were under it, and put it upon a pavement of stones. Furthermore, the pavilion for the Shabbat that they had built in the house, and the king's entry outside, he turned from the house of Yehuah toward the king of Ashur. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaz, which he did, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the kings of Yehudah? Furthermore, Ahaz slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. Then Achiz Yehu, his son, reigned in his stead. Chapter 17. During the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Yehudah, Hushai, the son of Allah, began to reign in Shamarun over Yeshariel for 9 years. However, he did evil in the sight of Yehuah, but not like the kings of Yeshariel who were before him. Shalmaneser, king of Ashur, came up against him. Therefore Hushai became his servant and gave him tributes. However, the king of Ashur found a conspiracy within Hushai, for he had sent messengers to Suah, king of Mitzrayim, and did not send a tribute to the king of Ashur year by year. Therefore, the king of Ashur shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Ashur came up throughout all the land, and went up to Shamarun, and besieged it for 3 years. During the 9th year of Hushai, the king of Ashur took Shamarun, and carried Yeshariel away to Asher. Then he placed them in Halach, and in the harbor of the Guzan River, in the cities of the Madai. For so it was that the children of Yeshariel had sinned against Yehuah, their Elohim, who had brought them up out of the land of Mitzrayim, from under the hand of Paro, king of Mitzrayim. But they revered other deities, and they walked in the customs of the nations that Yehuah cast out from before the children of Yeshariel, and the kings of Yeshariel, which they had made. Moreover, the children of Yeshariel did secret things that were not right unto Yehuah, their Elohim, and they built themselves high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchmen to the fenced city. And they set up monuments and asherahs in every high hill and under every green tree. And there they burned incense in all the high places, like the nations that Yehuah carried away before them. And they worked wicked things to provoke Yehuah to anger. For they served idols, which Yehuah had said to them, "You will not do this thing." Therefore Yehuah testified against Yeshariel and against Yehudah by all the prophets, all the seers, saying, "Turn from your evil ways, and keep my commandments, my customs, according to all the teaching that I commanded your fathers, and which I sent for you by my servants the prophets." However, they would not listen, but hardened their necks, like the necks of their fathers, who did not believe in Yehuah, their Elohim. And they rejected his customs and his covenant, which he made with their fathers, and his testimonies, which he testified against them. And they followed vanity, and became empty, and went after the nations that were round about them, which Yehuah had charged them, so that they would not do like them. And they left all the commandments of Yehuah their Elohim, and made themselves a mask of 2 calves, and made an asherah, and they worshipped all the hosts of the heavens, and served Baal. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire, and used enchantments and divinations, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of Yehuah, to provoke him to anger. Therefore Yehuah was very angry with Yeshariel, and removed them out of his sight. No one was left there but the tribe of Yehudah only. Also Yehudah did not keep the commandments of Yehuah their Elohim, but walked in the customs of Yeshariel, which they made. Therefore Yehuah rejected all the seed of Yeshariel, and afflicted them, and delivered them into the hand of spoilers, until he cast them out of his sight. For he tore Yeshariel from the house of David, and they made Yerebeam the son of Nebat king, and Yerebeam drove Yeshariel from following Yehuah, and made them sin a great sin. For the children of Yeshariel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They did not depart from them, until Yehu removed Yeshariel out of his sight, like he had said by his servants the prophets. Therefore Yeshariel was carried away out of their own Adamah to Ashur until this day. And the king of Ashur brought from Babel, and from Kutah, and from Abba, and from Hamath, and from Shapawam, and placed them in the cities of Shamerun, instead of the children of Yeshariel. Therefore they possessed Shamerun, and dwelt in its cities. And it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they did not revere Yehu. Therefore Yehu sent lions among them, which slew them. So they spoke to the king of Ashur, saying, The nations that you have removed and placed into the cities of Shamarun do not know the manner of the Elohim from the land. So he has sent lions among them, and behold, they slay them because they do not know the manner of the Elohim from the land. Then the king of Ashur commanded, saying, Carry one of the priests whom you brought from there, and let him go and dwell there, and let him teach them the manner of the Elohim from the land. Therefore one of the priests, who they had carried away from Shamarun, came and dwelt in Beit Al, and taught them how they should revere Yehu. However, every nation made deities of their own, and put it in the houses of the high places, which the Samaritans had made, every nation in their cities in which they dwelt. And the men of Babel made Sukkot Benut, and the men of Gut made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima, and of Aumim, Nibhaz and Tartak. And Shema and Auim made Nibhaz and Tartak. Also the Saparim burnt their children in fire to Ardamelech and Anamelech, the deities of Saparhuim. However, they became fearful of Yehu, yet they appointed for themselves priests of the high places from every class, who sacrificed for them in the houses of the high places. And they feared Yehu, yet they served their own deities, after the manner of the nations whom they carried away from there. Unto today they follow the previous manners. They do not revere Yehu, nor do they follow similar customs, nor after similar ordinances, nor after the teaching and commandments which Yehu commanded the children of Jacob, who he named Yeshariel, with whom Yehu had made a covenant, and charged them, saying, You will not revere other deities, nor bow yourselves to them, nor serve them, nor sacrifice to them. But Yehu, who brought you up out of the land of Mitzrayim with great power and an outstretched arm, you will fear him, and you will worship him, and you will do sacrifice unto him. And the customs and the ordinances and the teaching and the commandments which he wrote for you, you will observe all the days, and you will not revere other deities. And the covenant that I made with you, you will not forget, nor will you revere other deities. But you will revere Yehu your Elohim, and he will deliver you out of the hand of your enemies. However, they did not hearken, and they followed their previous manner. Thus these nations were fearful of Yehu, yet served their graven images, both their children and their children's children, like their fathers. So too they do until this day. Chapter 18. Now it came to pass during the 3rd year of Hushai, son of Allah, king of Yeshariel, that Hizkiyahu, the son of Ahaz, king of Yehuda, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 29 years in Yerushalayim. Also the name of his mother was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah, and he did right in the sight of Yehu, according to all that David his father did. He removed the high places, and broke the monument, and cut down the Asherah, and broke the copper serpent that Musha had made into pieces. For during those days the children of Yeshariel burnt incense to it, and they called it Nehu Shetan. He trusted in Yahweh Elohim of Yeshariel, such that there was none like him after nor before him. For he clung unto Yahweh, not departing from following him, and kept his commandments which Yahweh commanded Moshe. And Yahweh was with him in everything, such that he prospered wherever he went. Also he rebelled against the king of Ashur, and did not serve him. He struck the Pelishtim until Azza, and its borders from the tower of the watchmen to the fenced city. And it came to pass during the 4th year of King Chizkiyahu, which was the 7th year of Hushai, son of Allah, king of Yeshariel, that Shalmain Asur, king of Ashur, came up against Shamarun and besieged it. Then, at the end of 3 years, they took it. During the 6th year of Chizkiyahu, which is the 9th year of Hushai, king of Yeshariel, Shamarun was taken. Furthermore, the king of Ashur carried Yeshariel away to Ashur, and put them in Halach, and in the harbor of the Guzan River, and in the cities of Madai, because they did not obey the voice of Yahweh their Elohim. Rather, they transgressed his covenant, all that Moshe, the servant of Yahweh, commanded, not hearing it, nor doing it. Chapter 19. Now during the 14th year of King Chizkiyahu, Sanherib, king of Ashur, came up against all the fenced cities of Yehuda, and took them. And Chizkiyahu, king of Yehuda, sent to the king of Ashur to Lachish, saying, I have offended. Return from me that which you have opposed upon me. I will carry. And the king of Ashur appointed Chizkiyahu, king of Yehuda, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. Then Chizkiyahu gave all the silver that he found in the house of Yahweh and in the treasures of the king's house. At that time Chizkiyahu cut off the doors of the temple of Yahweh and the pillars which Chizkiyahu, king of Yehuda, had overlaid, and gave it to the king of Ashur. Then king of Ashur sent Dardan and Rabsaris and Rabshakeh from Lachish to King Chizkiyahu with a great army against Yerushalayim. Therefore they went up and came to Yerushalayim, and when they had come up, they came and stood by the conduit of the upper pool, which is in the highway of the fuller's field. Then some came, Eliakim, the son of Chikiyah, who was over the house, and Shebna, the scribe, Yoach, the son of Asaph, the recorder. And Rabshakeh said to them, Now say to Chizkiyahu, the great king, the king of Ashur, says this, What is this trust in which you trust? I have spoken a word with my lips. Take counsel and strengthen for war. Now in whom do you trust, such that you have rebelled against me? Behold, you trust in the staff of a broken reed, on Mitzrayim, of whom, if a man is lean, he goes into his hand and is pierced. This is how Paro, king of Mitzrayim, is to all who trusts in him. But if you say to me, We trust in Yahweh, our Elohim, is it not he whose high places and whose altars Chizkiyahu has taken away, and said to Yehuda and to Yerushalayim, You will worship before this altar. Now therefore, give pledges, I pray you, to my master, the king of Ashur, and I will give you 2,000 horses to set riders upon them, if you are able on your part. How will you turn away the presence of one captain of the least of my master's servants, and put your trust on Mitzrayim for chariots and for horsemen? And now it is none other than Yahweh that I have come against this land to destroy it. Yahweh said to me, go up against this land and destroy it. Then Eliakim and Shebna and Yoach said to Rabshakeh, Speak, I pray you, to your servants in the Aramite language, for we understand it, but do not speak to us in the Yehudim language, in the ears of the people who are on the wall. But Rabshakeh said, Has my master sent me to your master, and for you to speak these words? He has not sent me to the men who sit upon the wall, so that they may eat their own dung and drink their own piss with you. Then Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in the Yehudim language, and said, Hear the words of the great king, the king of Ashur. Do not let Chizkiyahu deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you. Nor let Chizkiyahu let you trust in Yehovah, saying, Yehovah will deliver us. This city will not be delivered into the hand of the king of Ashur. Do not hearken to Chizkiyahu, for thus saith the king of Ashur, Make an agreement with me by a present, and come out to me, and everyone may eat of his vine, and everyone of his fig tree. Also everyone may drink the waters of his own cistern, until I come and take you into a land like your own land, a land of grain and wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Beware lest Chizkiyahu persuade you, saying, Yehovah will deliver us. Has any of the deities of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Ashur? Where are the deities of Gamat and Arpad? Where are the deities of Shaparwaim, Hena, and Iowa? Have they delivered Shamerun out of my hand? Who are they among all these deities of these lands that have delivered their land out of my hand, such that Yehovah will deliver Yerushalayim out of my hand? But they held their peace, and did not answer a word to him. For the commandment from the king was to say, Do not answer him. Then Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and Yoach the son of Asaph, the recorder, came to Chizkiyahu with their clothes torn, and told him the words of Rabshakeh. And it came to pass, when the king Chizkiyahu heard it, that he tore his clothes and covered himself with sackcloth, and went into the house of Yehovah. And he sent Eliakim, who was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and the elders of the priests covered with sackcloth, to Yeshayahu, the son of Amoz, the prophet. And they said to him, Thus saith Chizkiyahu, Today is a day of trouble, and of rebuke, and of blasphemy, for the children have come to birth, yet there is no strength to bring forth. It may be Yehovah your Elohim will hear the words of Rabshakeh, whom the king of Ashur, his master, has sent to reproach the living Elohim, and will reprove the words which Yehovah your Elohim has heard. Why do you lift up your prayer for the remnant that is left? Therefore the servants of King Chizkiyahu came to Yehoshua, and Yehoshua said to them, Thus you will say to your master, Thus saith Yehovah, Do not be afraid of the words that you have heard, by which the servants of the king of Ashur have blasphemed me. Behold, I will send a blast upon him, and he will hear a rumor, and return to his land, and I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land. So Rabshakeh returned and found the king of Ashur warring against Libnah, for he had heard that he had departed from Lachish. Also concerning Tirhakah, king of Cush, he heard say, He has come forth to make war with you. And when he heard it, he sent messengers to Chizkiyahu, saying, Thus you will speak to Chizkiyahu, king of Yehudah, saying, Do not let your Elohim, in whom you trust, deceive you, saying, Yerushalayim will not be given into the hand of the king of Ashur. Behold, you have heard what the king of Ashur has done to all the lands by completely destroying them. Yet you will be delivered? Did the deities of the nations deliver those whom my fathers have destroyed? like Guzan and Haran and Rezep, and the children of Aden, who were in Telasar? Where is the king of Hamath, and the king of Arpad, and the king of the city of Sepharwan, Hena, and Iowa? Furthermore, Chizkiyahu received the letter from the hand of the messenger and read it. And Chizkiyahu went up to the house of Yahweh and spread it before Yahweh. And Chizkiyahu prayed unto Yahweh, saying, O Yahweh of hosts, Elohim of Yeshariel, who dwells between the cherubim, you are he, the Elohim. All the kingdoms of the earth are according to your tapestry. You have made the heavens and the earth. Incline your ear, O Yahweh, and hear. Open your eyes, O Yahweh, and see. And hear all the words of Sanharib, which was sent to reproach the living Elohim. Of a truth, Yahweh, the kings of Ashur have laid waste all the lands and their countries, and have cast their deities into the fire. For they are not deities, but they are the stone and wood work of Adam's hands. Therefore they have destroyed them. Now, O Yahweh, our Elohim, save us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone are Yahweh. Then Yeshayahu, the son of Amutz, sent to Chizkiyahu, saying, Thus saith Yahweh, Elohim of Yeshariel, who you prayed to concerning Sanharib, king of Ashur. This is the word which Yahweh has spoken concerning him. The virgin, the daughter of Zion, has despised you, and laughed you to scorn. The daughter of Yerushalayim has shaken her head at you, whom you have reproached and despised, and against whom you have exalted your voice, and lifted up your eyes on high, even against the Holy One of Yeshariel. By your servants you have reproached Adonai, and have said, By the multitude of my chariots I have come up to the height of the mountains, to the sides of Lebanon. Therefore I will cut down its tall cedars and its choice firs. Also I will enter into the height of its borders, and the forest of his garden. I have dug and drunk water, and with the sole of my feet I have dried up all the rivers of the besieged places. Have you not heard what I did long ago, and that I have designed it since ancient times? And you will carry waves of troublesome hawks. Therefore the inhabitants had a small hand. They were dismayed and confused. They were like grass of the field, and like the green herb, like the grass on a housetop, and like scorched grain before it grows up. But I know your abode, and your going out, and your coming in, and your rage against me. Because of your rage against me, and your uproar that has come up to my ears, therefore I will put my hook in your nose, and my bridle in your lips, and I will turn you back by the way which you came. And this will be a sign for you. This year you will eat that which grows of itself, also the second year that which shoots of the same. Then during the third year you will sow, and reap, and plant vineyards, and eat its fruit. Furthermore, the remnant that has escaped of the house of Yehudah will take root downward again, and bear fruit upward. For a remnant will come out of Yerushalayim, and those who escape out of Mount Zion. The zeal of Yahweh of hosts will do this. Therefore, thus saith Yahweh concerning the king of Ashur, He will not come into this city, nor shoot an arrow here, nor come into it with shields, nor cast an embarkment against it. For the way that he came by will be the same he will return, and he will not come into this city, saith Yahweh. For I will defend this city to save it for my own sake, and for the sake of my servant David. Then the angel of Yahweh went forth, and struck in the camp of Ashur 185,000. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. Therefore Sanherib, the king of Ashur, departed, and went and returned, and dwelt in Nineveh. And it came to pass, as he was worshipping in the house of Nisrach, his deity, that Adramelech and Sharezer, his sons, struck him with the sword. Then they escaped into the land of Ararat, and Asarhaddon, his son, reigned in his stead. Chapter 20. During those days Chizkiyahu was sick unto death, and the prophet Yeshayahu, the son of Amoz, came to him and said, Thus saith Yahweh, set your house in order, for you will die and not live. Therefore he turned his face to the wall and prayed unto Yahweh, saying, I beseech you, O Yahweh, now remember how I have walked before you in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done good in your sight. Then Chizkiyahu wept severely. And it came to pass before Yeshayahu had gone out into the middle of the court, that the word of Yahweh came to him, saying, Turn again and tell Chizkiyahu, the leader of my people, Thus saith Yahweh, the Elohim of David, your father, I have heard your prayer, I have seen your tears. Behold, I will heal you. On the third day you will go up to the house of Yahweh, and I will add 15 years to your days. And I will deliver you and this city out of the hand of the king of Ashur. I will defend this city for my own sake, and for the sake of my servant David. Furthermore, Yeshayahu said, Take a lump of figs. Therefore they took it and laid it upon the rupture, and he recovered. Then Chizkiyahu asked Yeshayahu, What is the sign that Yahweh will heal me, and that I will go up into the house of Yahweh the third day? Therefore Yeshayahu answered, You will have this sign of Yahweh, such that Yahweh will do this thing that he has spoken. Should the shadow go forward 10 degrees, or go back 10 degrees? And Yeshayahu answered, It is a small thing for the shadow to go down 10 degrees. No. However, let the shadow return backward 10 degrees. Therefore Yeshayahu the prophet cried unto Yahweh, and he brought the shadow 10 degrees backward, by which it had gone down in the dial of Ahaz. During that time Berodach Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babel, sent letters and a present to Chizkiyahu, for he had heard that Chizkiyahu had been sick. During that time Barak Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babel, sent letters and a present to Chizkiyahu, for he had heard that Chizkiyahu had been sick. Moreover, Chizkiyahu hearkened to them, and showed them the entire house of his precious things, the silver and the gold, and the spices, and the precious ointment, and the house of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Chizkiyahu did not show them. Then Yeshayahu the prophet came to King Chizkiyahu, and asked him, What did these men say? And from where did they come to you? Therefore Chizkiyahu answered, They came from a far country, from Babel. Then he asked, What have they seen in your house? So Chizkiyahu answered, They have seen everything that is in my house. There is nothing among my treasures that I have not shown them. Therefore Yeshayahu said to Chizkiyahu, Hear the word of Yahweh. Behold, the days come that all that is in your house, and all that your fathers had laid up in storage until today, will be carried into Babel. Nothing will be left, saith Yahweh. Also of your sons who descend from you, who you beget, they will be taken away, and they will become eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babel. Then Chizkiyahu said to Yeshayahu, The word of Yahweh which you have spoken is good. And he said, Is it not, if peace and truth are in my days? and the rest of the acts of Chizkiyahu and all his might, and how he made a pool and a channel, and brought water into the city, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the kings of Yehuda? Furthermore, Chizkiyahu slept with his fathers. Then Menashe, his son, reigned in his stead. Chapter 21. Menashe was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Yerushalayim, and the name of his mother was Hephzibah. However, he did evil in the sight of Yahweh, following the abominations of the nations who Yahweh cast out before the children of Yeshariel. For he built up the high places again, which Chizkiyahu his father had destroyed. And he reared up altars unto Baal, and made an Asherah, like Ahab, king of Yeshariel. And he worshipped all the hosts of the heavens, and served them. And he built an altar in the house of Yahweh, concerning that which Yahweh had said, In Yerushalayim I will put my name. And he built altars for all the hosts of the heavens in the 2 courts of the house of Yahweh. And he made his son pass through the fire, and observed clouds, and used divination, and dwelt with familiar spirits and wizards. He worked much wickedness in the sight of Yahweh, to provoke to anger. Also he set a statue of Asherah that he had made in the house, concerning that which Yahweh said to David and to Shalomah his son, In this house and in Yerushalayim, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Yeshariel, I will put my name forever. I will not make the feet of Yeshariel move from the Adamah which I gave their fathers any more, only if they observe to do according to all that I have commanded them, and according to all the teaching that my servant Musha commanded them. But they did not hearken. And Menashe seduced them to do more evil than the nations who Yahweh destroyed before the children of Yeshariel. Therefore Yahweh spoke to his servants the prophets, saying, Because Menashe, king of Yehuda, has done these abominations, doing wickedly above all that the Amori who were before him, and has made Yehuda to sin with his idols also. Thus saith Yahweh Elohim of Yeshariel, Behold, I am bringing evil upon Yerushalayim, such that whoever hears of it, both his ears will tingle. And I will stretch the line of Shamarun and the plummet of the house of Ahab over Yerushalayim. And I will wipe Yerushalayim like a dish is wiped, wiping it and turning it upside down. Also I will forsake the remnant of my inheritance, and deliver them into the hand of their enemies, and they will become a prey and a plunder to all their enemies, because they have done evil in my sight, and have provoked me to anger, since the day their fathers came forth out of Mitzrayim, even to this day. Moreover, Menashe shed a great amount of innocent blood, until he had filled Yerushalayim from one end to another. Beside his sin, he made Yehuda to sin by doing evil in the sight of Yahweh. Now the rest of the acts of Menashe, and all that he did, and his sin that he sinned, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the kings of Yehuda? Furthermore, Menashe slept with his fathers, and he was buried in the garden of his house, in the garden of Autzah, and Amun his son reigned in his stead. Amun was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 2 years in Yerushalayim. And the name of his mother was Meshulamet, the daughter of Harutz of Yathba. However, he did evil in the sight of Yahweh, like his father Menashe did, and he walked in all the ways that his father walked in, and served the idols that his father served, and worshipped them. Also he forsook Yahweh Elohim of his fathers, and he did not walk in the ways of Yahweh, and he did not walk in the way of Yahweh. Moreover, the servants of Ammon conspired against him, and slew the king in his own house. And the people from the land slew all those who had conspired against King Ammon. And the people from the land made Yashiyehu his son king in his stead. Now the rest of the acts of Amun, which he did, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the kings of Yehuda? And he was buried in his sepulchre in the garden of Auzza. Then Yashiyehu, his son, reigned in his stead. Chapter 22. Yashiyehu was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 31 years in Yerushalayim. And the name of his mother was Yedida, the daughter of Adaiah of Batzgat. And he did right in the sight of Yehweh, and he walked in all the ways of David his father, and he did not turn aside to the right hand nor to the left. And it came to pass during the 18th year of King Yashiyehu, that the king sent Shaphan, the son of Azaryehu, the son of Meshullam, the scribe, to the house of Yehweh, saying, Go up to Hilkiah the priest, so that he may count the silver that is brought in the house of Yehweh, which the keepers of the door have gathered for the people. And let them deliver it into the hand of the doers of the work, who have the oversight of the house of Yehweh, and let them give it to the doers of the work who are in the house of Yehweh to repair the breaches of the house, unto carpenters and builders and masons, also to buy timber and cut stones to repair the house. However, there was no reckoning of the money that was delivered into their hand made with them, because they did faithfully. And Hilkiah the priest said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the supper of the teaching of the house of Yehweh. Therefore Hilkiah gave the supper of. Moreover, Hilkiah gave the supper to Shaphan, and he read it. Then Shaphan the scribe came to the king, and brought the king word again, and said, Your servants have gathered the money that was found in the house, and have delivered it into the hand of those who will do the work, who have the oversight of the house. And Shaphan the scribe showed the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has delivered a supper to me. Therefore Shaphan read it before the king. And it came to pass, when the king had heard the words of the supper, of the teaching, that he tore his clothes. And the king commanded Hilkiah the priest, and Ahikam the son of Shaphan, and Akbor the son of Micaiah, and Shaphan the scribe, and Ashaiah the servant of the king, and Ashaiah the servant of the king, saying, Go inquire of Yehweh for me, and for the people, and for all Yehuda, concerning the words of this supper that is found. For great is the wrath of Yehweh, which is kindled against us, because our fathers have not hearkened to the words of this supper, to do according to all that is written concerning us. So Hilkiah the priest, and Ahikam, and Akbor, and Shaphan, and Ashaiah went to Huldah the priestess, the wife of Shallum the son of Tikua, the son of Harhas, keeper of the wardrobe. Now she dwelt in Yerushalayim in the second order, and they communed with her. And she said to them, Thus saith Yehweh, Elohim of Yeshariel, Tell the man who sent you to me, Thus saith Yehweh, I will bring evil upon this place, and upon its inhabitants, all the words of this supper which the king of Yehuda has read, because they have forsaken me, and have burned incense to other deities, so that they might provoke me to anger with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath will be kindled against this place, and will not be quenched. But to the king of Yehuda, who sent you to inquire of Yehweh, thus you will say to him, Thus saith Yehweh Elohim of Yeshariel, the words that you have heard, because your heart was tender, and you have humbled yourself before Yehweh, when you heard that which I spoke against this place, and against its inhabitants, that they will come to a desolation and a curse, and have tore your clothes and wept before me, I also have heard, saith Yehweh. Behold, therefore, I will gather you to your fathers, and you will be gathered into your grave in peace, and your eyes will not see all the evil that I will bring upon this place. Therefore they brought the king word again. Chapter 23. And the king sent, and they gathered all the elders of Yehuda and of Yerushalayim to him. Then the kings went up into the house of Yehuah, and all the men of Yehuda and all the inhabitants of Yerushalayim with him, and the priests and the prophets and all the people, both great and small. Then in their ears he read all the words of the supper of the covenant which was found in the house of Yehuah. Moreover, the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before Yehuah, to walk after Yehuah, and to keep his commandments, and his testimonies, and his customs, with all their heart and all their soul, to perform the words of this covenant that were written in this supper. And all the people stood with the covenant. And the king commanded Hilkiah, the high priest, and the priests of the second order, and the keepers of the door, to bring out of the temple of Yehuah all the vessels that were made for Baal, and for Asherah, and for all the hosts of the heavens. Then he burned them outside of Yerushalayim, in the fields of Kidron, and carried their ashes to Beit Al. And he removed the idolatrous priests, who the kings of Yehuda had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Yehuda, and in the places round about Yerushalayim. Also those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the hosts of the heavens. Then he brought out the Asherah from the house of Yehuah, outside Yerushalayim, to the brook Kidron, and crushed it small to powder, and cast its powder upon the graves of the children of the people. And he broke down the houses of the man-whores who were by the house of Yehuah, where the women wove hangings for Asherah. And he brought all the priests out of the cities of Yehuda, and defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense, from Geba to Beersheba. And he broke down the high places of the gates that were in the entrance of the gate of Yehoshua, the governor of the city, which were on the man's left side at the gate of the city. However, the priests of the high places did not come up to the altar of Yehuah in Yerushalayim, but they ate of the unleavened bread among their brethren. And he defiled Tabbath, which is the valley of the children of Hinnom, so that no man may take his son or daughter to pass through the fire of Molech. And he took away the horses that the kings of Yehuda had given to the sun, at the entering in the gate of the house of Yehuah, by the chamber of Nathan-Melech, who was in the suburbs, and burned the chariots of the sun with fire. And the altars that were on top of the upper chamber of Ahaz, which the kings of Yehuda had made, and the altars which Menashe had made in the two courts of the house of Yehuah, the king beat down and broke down from there, and cast their dust into the brook Kidron. And the high places that were before Yerushalayim, which were on the right hand of the Mount of Corruption, which Shelumah the king of Yeshariel had built for Ashtoreth, the abomination of the Zidunim, and for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon, the king defiled. And he broke in pieces the monuments, and cut down the Asherah, and filled their places with bones of Adam. Moreover, the altars that was in Beit Al, the high places which Yerebeam the son of Nebat, who caused Yeshariel to sin, had made, he broke down both the altar and the high place, and burned the high place, crushing it small to powder, and burning the Asherah. And as Ashiyehu turned himself, he spied the sepulchres that were there in the mount, and sent and took the bones out of the sepulchres, and burned them upon the altar, and polluted it, according to the word of Yahuwah, which the man of Elohim proclaimed, who proclaimed these words. Then he asked, "What title is this that I see?" And the men of the city told him, "This is the sepulchre of the man of Elohim, who came from Yehuda, and proclaimed these things that you have done against the altar of Beit El." And he said, "Let him alone, let no man move his bones." So they left his bones alone with the bones of the prophet who came out of Shamarun. Also all the houses of the high places that were in the cities of Shamarun, which the king of Yisrael had made to provoke to anger, Yashiyehu took away, and did to them according to all the acts that he had done to Beit El. And he slew all the priests of the high places who were upon the altars, and burned the bones of Adam upon them, and returned to Yerushalayim. And the king commanded all the people, saying, "Keep the Passover unto Yahuwah your Elohim, like it is written in the supper of his covenant." Surely there was not holden such a Passover for the days of the judges that judged Yisrael, nor in all the days of the kings of Yisrael, nor of the kings of Yehuda. But during the 18th year of King Yashiyehu, this Passover was holden unto Yahuwah in Yerushalayim. Moreover, the familiar spirits, and the wizards, and the teraphim, and the idols, and all the abominations that were spied in the land of Yehuda and in Yerushalayim, Yashiyehu put away, so that he might perform the words of the teaching which were written in the Sefer that Hilkiah the priest found in the house of Yahuwah. And there was no king before him who was like him, who turned with all his heart, and with all his soul, and with all his might unto Yahuwah, according to all the teaching of Musha. Nor after him did anyone arise like him. However, Yahuwah did not turn from the fierceness of his great wrath, of which his anger was kindled against Yehuda because of all the provocations that Menashe had provoked him with. Therefore Yahuwah said, "I will remove Yehuda out of my sight, also like I have removed Yisrael, and I will cast off this city, Yerushalayim, which I have chosen, and the house of which I said, my name will be there." Now the rest of the acts of Yashiyehu and all that he did, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the kings of Yehuda? During his days, Paro Necho, king of Mitzrayim, went up against the king of Ashur to the river Paret, and King Yashiyehu went against him. And when he had seen him, he slew him at Megiddo. And his servants carried him dead in a chariot from Megiddo, and brought him to Yerushalayim, and buried him in his own sepulchre. And the people from the land took Yehoahaz the son of Yashiyehu, and anointed him, and made him king in his father's stead. Yehoahaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 3 months in Yerushalayim. And the name of his mother was Yamuthal, the daughter of Yeremiyehu of Libnah. And he did evil in the sight of Yahuwah, according to all that his fathers had done. Chapter 24. And Paro Necho put him in bounds in Riblah, in the land of Hamat, so that he would not reign in Yerushalayim. And he put the land to a tribute of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. Then Paro Necho made Eliakim, the son of Yashiyehu, king in the place of Yashiyehu, his father. Also he turned his name to Yehoiakim, and took Yehoahaz away. Furthermore, he came to Mitzrayim, and died there. Moreover, Yehoiakim gave the silver and the gold to Paro, but he taxed the land to give the money according to the commandment of Paro. He exacted the silver and the gold of the people from the land, of everyone according to his taxation, to give to Paro Necho. Yehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and the name of his mother was Zebudah, the daughter of Pedaiah of Rumah. However, he did evil in the sight of Yahweh, according to what his fathers had done. During his days, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant for 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him. And against him Yahweh sent troops of the Kashdim, and troops of Aram, and troops of Moab, and troops of the children of Ammon. Therefore he sent them against Yehudah to destroy it, according to the word of Yahweh, which he spoke by his servants the prophets. Surely by the commandment of Yahweh this came to pass in Yehudah, to remove them out of his sight, for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did. Also for the innocent blood that he shed, for he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, which Yahweh would not pardon. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim, and all that he did, are they not written in the Sefer of the Chronicles of the Kings of Yehudah? Furthermore, Jehoiakim slept with his fathers, and Jehoiakim, his son, reigned in his stead. And the king of Mitzrayim did not come out of his land any more, for the king of Babel had taken from the river of Mitzrayim to the river Parat all who pertained to the king of Mitzrayim. Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he began his reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 3 months. And the name of his mother was Nehushata, the daughter of Al-Nathan of Jerusalem. And he did evil in the sight of Yahweh, according to all that his father had done. At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. Moreover, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, came against the city, and his servants besieged it. And Jehoiakim, the king of Yehudah, went out to the king of Babel, he and his mother, and his servants, and his captains, and his officers. Therefore the king of Babel took him in the 8th year of his reign. For from there he carried all the treasures of the house of Yahweh, and the treasures of the king's house. Also he cut in pieces all the vessels of gold that Shalomah, king of Yeshariel, had made in the temple of Yahweh, as Yahweh had said. And he carried away all Jerusalem, and all the captains, and all the mighty men of valor, 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths. No one remained, except the poorest of the people from the land. And he carried away Jehoiakim to Babel, and the king's mother, and the king's wives, and his officers. Therefore he carried the mighty from the land into captivity from Jerusalem to Babel. And all the men of might were 7,000, and craftsmen and smiths were 1,000. All the strongest who were capable of war, even those the king of Babel brought captive to Babel. Also the king of Babel made Mattaniah, his father's brother, king in his stead, and changed his name to Zidkiyahu. Zidkiyahu was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 11 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Hamuthal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. However, he did evil in the sight of Yahweh, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. For by the anger of Yahweh this came to pass in Jerusalem and Yehudah, until he had cast them out from his presence. However, Zidkiyahu rebelled against the king of Babel. Chapter 25. And it came to pass during the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel, came, he and all his army, against Yeshariel, and pitched against it, and they built forts against it round about. And the city was besieged until the 11th year of Zidkiyahu. And on the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine prevailed in the city, and there was no bread for the people of the land. And the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between the two walls, which is by the king's garden. Now the Kashdim were against the city round about, and the king went that way toward the plain. And the army of the Kashdim pursued after the king, and overtook him in the plains of Yerahu, and all his army was scattered from him. Therefore they took the king, and brought him up to the king of Babel, to Riblah, and they gave judgment upon him. Then they slew the sons of Zidkiyehu before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zidkiyehu, and bound him in copper feathers, and carried him to Babel. And during the 5th month, on the 7th of the month, which is the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babel, came to Jerusalem, and he burnt the house of Yahweh, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every great house he burnt with fire. And all the army of the Kashdim, who were with the captain of the guard, broke down the walls of Jerusalem round about. Now the rest of the people who were left in the city, and the fugitives who fell away from the king of Babel, with the remnant of the multitude, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carried away. However, the captain of the guard left the poor to be vine dressers and husbandmen, and the copper pillars that were in the house of Yahweh, and the bases, and the copper sea that was in the house of Yahweh. The Kashdim broke in pieces, and carried their copper to Babel, and the pots, and the shovels, and the snuffers, and the spoons, and all the vessels of copper with which they ministered, they took away, and the fire pans, and the bowls, such that were of gold, in gold, and of silver, in silver, the captains of the guard took away. The 2 pillars, 1 sea, and the bases which Shalomah had made for the house of Yahweh. The copper of all these vessels was without weight. The height of the 1 pillar was 18 cubits, and the capital upon it was copper. And the height of the capital was 3 cubits. And the woven work, and the pomegranates upon the capital round about, all of copper. And like these, the 2nd pillar had woven work. Furthermore, the captain of the guard took Sheriah, the chief priest, and Zephaniah, the 2nd priest, and the 3 keepers of the door. And out of the city he took an officer that was set over the men of war, and 5 men of those who were in the king's presence, who were found in the city, and the principal scribe of the army, who gathered the people from the land. And 60 men of the people from the land were found in the city. Then Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, took these, and brought them to the king of Babel, to Riblah. Moreover, the king of Babel struck them, and slew them at Riblah, in the land of Hamath. Therefore Yehudah was carried away out of their Adamah. And of the people who remained in the land of Yehudah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel, had left, he made Gadal Yehu, the son of Achikam, the son of Shaphan, ruler over them. And when all the captains of the armies, they and their men, heard that the king of Babel had made Gadal Yehu governor, there came to Gadal Yehu to Mitzpah Yeshmael the son of Nathaniah, and Elhanan the son of Kareah, and Sareah the son of Tanhumath, the Nathbati, and Yaazan Yehu the son of Amakaati, them and their men. And Gadal Yehu swore to them and to their men, and said to them, Do not fear to become servants of the Kashdim. Dwell in the land, and serve the king of Babel, and it will be well with you. But it came to pass during the 7th month that Yishmael, the son of Netaniah, the son of Elishama of the royal seed, came, and 10 men with him, and struck Gedaliah. Thus he died. Also the Yehudim and the Kashdim who were with him at Mitzpah. And all the people, both small and great, and the captains of the armies arose, and went to Mitzrayim, for they were afraid of the Kashdim. And it came to pass in the 37th year of the captivity of Yehoiakim, king of Yehuda, during the 12th month, on the 27th of the month, that Evil-Merodach, king of Babel, in the year that he began to reign, lifted up the head of Yehoiakim, king of Yehuda, out of prison. And he spoke kindly to him, and set his throne above the throne of the kings who were with him in Babel, and changed his prison garments, and he ate bread continually before him all the days of his life. And his allowance was a continual allowance given him to the king, a daily rate for every day, all the days of his life. The end. Thank you for listening to my interpretation of 2nd Melachim, 2nd Kings. I hope that you find my Bible series, Choreb Beruach, Sword of the Spirit, enlightening. The word of Yahweh is a treasure trove of mysteries. It's amazing what you'll discover when you read it with your eyes open. My name is Wendy, and you've been called out of darkness